And now, the Bill Hicks is still ahead of his time clip of the week.
You ever notice how people who believe in creationism look really unevolved? Eyes real close together, big furry hands and feet. I'll believe God created me in one day. Yeah, it looks like he rushed it.
Something from the late comedian and transcendent commentator Bill Hicks, which we'll show you about once a week with the kind permission of his family. That's from 20 years ago, and it's still as fresh as today's headlines. Specifically, our third story on the countdown headline: Creationism as political platform. In all the talk about the Tea Party takeover of the Republican Party, much of the focus has been on the alleged fiscal discipline the Tea Party wants to restore to government, specifically reining in government spending while somehow paying for new tax cuts for the rich. But the dirty little secret of this Tea Party is that it did not arise from nothing. Many of its members, leaders, and even candidates emerged from a previous political movement, the religious right, which has spent the last few decades trying to undo the constitutional separation of church and state and to outlaw abortion, to force their God into people's schools, to deny gay people their rights, and to deny an entire generation and generations yet to come of American students the fundamental right of knowledge and understanding about the cornerstone of the entire science of biology, about the most fundamental thing in the world, how they came to be. That's right. The Tea Party wants to deny our children the right to understand evolution. The irony even they do not see is that their fight against evolution has failed so miserably with the public and in the courts that they may have to adapt it, mutating, evolving. And so now they fight for teaching all theories, including, shocker, intelligent design, which of course evolved from straight-out creationism, the theory which first appeared in that scientific journal, The Book of Genesis, that God created humanity. In 2008, the presidential candidates for the Republican side were asked at a debate whether they disputed the scientific fact of evolution. Three of the candidates, Sam Brownback, Tom Tancredo, and potential 2012 nominee Mike Huckabee, raised their hands. Candidates for the highest office in the land rejecting a cornerstone of science. With the rise of the Tea Party, the ratio of scientific literacy to illiteracy among candidates for national office appearing to get even worse. Florida's Senate candidate Marco Rubio tried to undermine the teaching of evolution in schools in his state. Christine O'Donnell, Delaware Senate hopeful, quote, "Evolution is a theory. There is not enough evidence, consistent evidence to make it as a fact. Creationism is believing that the world began as the Bible in Genesis says, that God created the earth in 6 days, 6 24-hour periods, and there's just as much, if not more, evidence supporting that." Nevada Senate candidate Sharon Angle, quote, "We weren't there. We can't see and hear for ourselves and say absolutely this is how it happened. When we're trying to raise logical thinkers, we have to give them every argument." Not to mention the Tea Party's 2012 favorite who ran for vice president with one of the party's last leaders to admit he believes in evolution. On that note, let's bring in Professor Steven Pinker, who researches language and cognition at Harvard and is author of The Blank Slate, The Modern Denial of Human Nature, among other works. Professor, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
What are the implications for kids of having a growing number of creationists in positions of power in Congress, Senate, state houses around the country?
Well, it doesn't augur well for science education. We're the world's richest country. We're the world's most technologically advanced country. You'd think that our students would understand science at the highest level in the world. In fact, in tests of scientific understanding, other countries regularly beat the pants off us. It means that instead of perfecting our science curriculum so that we have kids who are more scientifically literate, the curriculum is going to be designed by politicians who want to insert Bible stories instead of the best possible science.
Why does it matter if kids understand biology or evolution? I mean, I don't have to dissect frogs to do my job here every day.
Well, there's some practical reasons. Some of the great technological advances of the next few decades are going to be in the biological sciences, and you can't do biology unless you understand evolution. There's going to be a race between us and the superbugs, the viruses that are going to attack us. Their big weapon is that they can evolve fast. If we don't have a generation of science students and scientists who understand evolution, we're not going to be able to understand our worst enemies. Also, great advances in diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease are often going to come from research on other animals, because you obviously can't give cancer or give Parkinson's disease to a human. You can to a mouse. We have to understand what the relationship is between a mouse and a human in order to interpret that science. Scientists have a credo that nothing in biology makes sense except in light of evolution. If you're going to sow confusion about evolution, you're sowing confusion about biology. That's the last thing that we need in the economic and technological advances that we face. But also, what could be more fundamental than knowing where we came from? The theory of evolution is one of the most magnificent intellectual accomplishments of our civilization. It's a tragedy to deny children of the evidence, the line of argumentation that led to this magnificent achievement and this essential bit of knowledge to understanding who we are and where we came from.
I alluded to this broadly earlier. Does accepting creationism have broader social consequences? Is there indeed evidence that the more a country embraces creationism, the less likely it is to have what we would consider an advanced society?
Well, it's certainly true that among industrialized modern societies, the two countries that are lowest on the scale of accepting evolution are the United States and Turkey. And we do have to ask ourselves the question, do we think that our country should be a lot more like Turkey? Is that the neighborhood that we belong in? Not to insult the nation of Turkey, but it's not clearly the direction that we obviously want to go in. The basic question is, do we want to convey to our kids that the way to understand the world is to ask questions, to study it honestly, to go where the evidence takes us, or do we want to understand the world by what politicians tell us and what they legislate in acts of Congress instead of what the best scientists figure out?
Dr. Steven Pinker, professor of psychology at Harvard University, thanks for adding to this discussion. Great, thanks, sir.
Thank you.